So hello everybody, welcome to Chess in the Romantic Era. For those in YouTube, my name is Pepe Cuenca. I'm an Spanish Grandmaster, the current Grandmaster in residence here in the St. Louis Chess Club. Happy to be here with all of you. Today I'm going to talk about Adolf Anderssen. You guys know who was Adolf Anderssen? No? Okay. It's one of my favorite chess players. He was considered to be the best chess player in the world in the 19th century. Actually, he was a mathematician. He studied mathematics and also philosophy, and his main job was high school teacher. But then, as a hobby, he was the best chess player in the world. Yeah? So but yes. The one who defeated him was Paul Morphy. He was a great American chess player in a tour he gave in Europe. Yeah, but probably you have heard about Anderssen in many ways, and probably you have seen many of his games. One of his most famous game is the so-called the Evergreen game, who was already explained in the St. Louis Chess Club channel, so I didn't want to repeat that. So I'm going to show you two other games which are also very spectacular. So the first one happened between him with the white pieces and Lionel Adalbert Kieseritzky. Hard name to pronounce, right? Normally in these times they used to play in cafes. For example, there were no chess tournaments organized in the St. Louis Chess Club that time. And they used to meet in cafes. For example, La Régence or La Régence in Paris was great place to play chess, and best player in the world. They used to meet over there. And okay, this game it was baptized as the Immortal Game from Adolf Anderssen, like few years later by another players. And these players in the Romantic era, they were extremely aggressive, chess picking, of course. They really wanted to attack the opposite king, open files, sacrifice everything, and yeah, they didn't think much about positional play or prophylaxis or stuff like that. Yeah. All right, so I'm gonna show you this first game, which is very, very interesting. So Anderssen with the white pieces, e4, e5, and of course, King's Gambit. Yeah. So very aggressive play. What's the King's Gambit idea, Adi? Why are you sacrificing a pawn? You get something in return? You get nothing?
To get the center?
Exactly. So you sacrifice this f-pawn in order to gain some control in the center, right? So lately you're going to play d4 and knight f3, for example, and you are gaining a lot of control in the center. And hopefully you will get this pawn back in the future, right? The f4 pawn. Here there are two main variations. So you can play knight f3 or you can play bishop c4. Bishop c4 was played. With knight f3, you stop queen h4 check. With bishop c4, you stop d5, which is one of the most common black's ideas in this position. So bishop c4 was played. The main drawback is that black can play queen h4 check, right? And this was played in the game. It's nothing serious, as white can play king f1, and later you're going to play knight f3 and win another tempo, kicking this queen from h4. And here, a very interesting move. Maybe not a move that we would see today. b5. Another pawn sacrifice by Kieseritzky. Black's idea is maybe very simple. So this bishop was on c4, perfectly placed, pointing to the f7 pawn, which is the weakest pawn that black has in this position. And also now, after some move like c6, you will gain another tempo and you are ready to strike in the center with d5. Also, this bishop can come to b7, putting some pressure on the e4 pawn. Knight f6 was played by Kieseritzky, attacking the e4 pawn, and now a natural move, developing a piece and protecting or attacking black's queen, knight f3. So here, two different approaches. You could go queen h5 or queen h6. To me, queen h6 looks more natural since you are protecting f4, and maybe you are ready to go g5 at some point, right? d3 was played. Now you protect the e4 pawn, and you put an eye on the f4 pawn again. And here, what will you play here with the black pieces? Knight h5, exactly. This is what Kieseritzky played. It's a really natural move. So you protect f4, and then you are threatening something.
G3.
Exactly. So if white goes knight c3, then knight g3 just wins, because after h takes, the rook on h1 is just hanging. So after knight h5, Adolf Anderssen stopped this threat by playing knight h4. Knight h4 now stops knight g3, because now it doesn't make any sense. We can just capture the knight, and now we are aiming to go to the f5 square. All right, so black played queen to g5, attacking this knight on h4, and now attacking also the bishop on from b5. So what's the only move not to blunder a piece? Resign, somebody's saying in YouTube. Sorry? Yes? Knight f5, right? So now the two pieces are protected. Okay, so c6 was played here. You could say that g6 is interesting, right? Because now if I just move my knight back, then this bishop is going to be hanging. But there is h4, queen f6, and now knight c3. Very interesting move, since now you can take on f5, but the knight on h5 is hanging. So, and also you are threatening to go to d5 with this knight. Let's say g takes f5, queen takes h5, and this is a very messy position. So after knight f5, instead of g6, Kieseritzky played c6, attacking this bishop. And now, of course, it was possible to go bishop c4, but after bishop c4, what would you play here with the black pieces? Active move. Candidate moves. What do you play?
Bishop a6.
Bishop?
Bishop a6.
Bishop a6. All right. That's reasonable. But there is a better move here. D5, exactly. Now, you attack this bishop. It's not possible to capture here because the knight on f5 is hanging, right? And then when this bishop goes back, you just capture on f5. Then black's a pawn up. So, after c6 instead, these guys were brilliant. And Anderssen didn't go for bishop c4. Instead, he played the move g4. Crazy, right? Attacking this knight from h5. And now, of course, you cannot take en passant because the queen is hanging. So you can now take this bishop or move the knight, right? If you take this bishop, g takes h5, let's say d5, rook g1, queen f6, and knight c3. And white pieces are extremely well coordinated. This knight is jumping to d5, this bishop is coming to f4, the rook is on the g file. So basically, white is much better here. Let's say d takes e4, d takes e4, and now this knight is coming to d5 with a lot of pressure. So that's why after g4, this knight was retreated to f6, and now again, I was analyzing this game, and I was hoping some bishop c4 or some bishop a4, right, as a natural human being. But Anderssen, he played rook g1 here. Let's just try to understand this move. Again, after bishop c4, same move. First h5, g takes, and now d5. Right? So rook g1 was played. And the thing is that now after c takes b5, as happened in the game, you're going to play h4. And this queen hasn't got too many squares. So c takes b5, h4, queen g6, only move. And now, what do you play here with the white pieces? If you had two moves, you will play bishop f4 and h5, and there is no square for the queen. Sorry. So basically, there are two options, right? Two reasonable options. You can play bishop f4 or you can play h5, but there's a big difference. You play bishop f4. Okay. How about you guys? Bishop f4 or h5? h5. Okay, the problem with bishop f4 is that now black can play h5. And the queen is more or less safe and black's a piece off. After g5, you just move the knight away and nothing bad happens. So the best move is h5. And now after queen g5 only move, queen to f3. Now it's very tough for black to protect this f4 pawn. Basically your threat is bishop f4 just winning the game on the spot. So you have to run away with your queen, and it's not easy. How you run away with your queen? Sorry, Adi? Move your knight, exactly. This is precisely what Kieseritzky did. And he went knight g8 because there are not so many squares available, right? And now, you just take on f4, queen f6, and another developing move, knight to c3. Look at this position. So, okay, black is a piece up, but look at the coordination of white pieces. Every piece is out. All black pieces are in the back rank. This knight is joining the party by a d5, and e5 is also possible. g5 is also possible. So basically, it's a very tough position for black. Bishop c5 was played, trying to develop another piece, attacking the rook on g1. And now we would think like, okay, now Anderssen sacrificed enough pieces, so he would go rook g2 and then knight d5 or something. But no, he went straight away for knight d5. Another good move. And here, Kieseritzky took on b2. Basically now, black is threatening the rook on a1 and the rook on g1. And here, according to the engines that we have today, Anderssen made a mistake. He played the move bishop d6. We're gonna try to understand that move later. But the best move here was rook e1. Not an easy move though, right? Because after bishop g1, there's knight d6 check, king d8, knight f7, king e8 only move, knight d6, king d8, and e5. And it's just impossible to stop bishop g5 check. And white is winning. But bishop d6 was played here. Idea is pretty simple. So after bishop d6, you want to go knight d6, and then the f7 pawn is hanging. But the first question that comes to our mind is possible to take the rook on a1 or the rook on g1? What's white threat here? So we want to take the bishop on c5. So Kieseritzky took the rook on g1. It was very interesting to see what happens after queen takes a1. King e2, and do you think that black can take on g1 or not? Bishop d6 was a really beautiful move because it's sacrificing both rooks, and now black can take the rook on g1. Why? Checkmate in two moves.
Knight G7, bishop C7.
Exactly. Knight g7, only move king d8 and bishop c7. All right. So Kieseritzky played bishop g1, and We're going to see what happened later. The best move for black here was queen a1, king e2, and queen b2. The most important thing is to keep an eye on this g7 pawn. So if you take on g1, then knight g7 followed by bishop c7 is just checkmate. But after queen b2, the position is not very clear. So the engines are suggesting bishop takes c5, queen c2, in f1, queen c5, and queen f4, and the engines say that this position is around equal. It's crazy, right? Because we're a rook and a piece down, but we have a lot of activity here. We are threatening knight d6, knight g7, knight d6 followed by knight f7, sorry, or queen f7. This is just crazy. You can play with the engine a little bit and try to understand what's going on. But okay, he took on g1, and now, brilliant move, e5. Cutting the action of the queen over the g7 square. And basically, there's no way of stopping knight g7, right? So, what's white threat here? You want to take on g7 and you want to play bishop c7. So first he took on a1. That looks reasonable. It's a check and I get a rook for free. I love food for free, right? So queen a1, king e2, and now how do you stop the mate on c7? Let's see if you guys think like Kieseritzky. Knight a6, great. It looks like black is winning, right? Knight a6. And then after knight g7, king d8, then there's no bishop c7, checkmate. So black is a queen and two rooks up. But there is an extremely beautiful finish. And that's why this game is called the Immortal Game. After knight a6, let's see if you guys can find the mate. How about the people in YouTube? You guys can see something? There's checkmate here. Checkmate in 3 moves.
I will go for the g7 pawn anyway.
Yeah, and then after king d8?
The queen can deflect the knight in f6, I think.
Beautiful. That's the solution. So, knight takes g7, king d8, and now queen f6. And after knight f6, bishop e7, checkmate. Only with 3 minor pieces in the board. Black is a rook, 2 rooks, and a queen, and a piece up. Yeah. So he sacrificed everything. Even, I think he sacrificed even his glasses or something. Yeah.
And
so
knight a6 is the only move possible there.
Yes.
No way to do anything.
Exactly. After e5, queen a1, king e2. Now there's no way of stopping knight g7 and bishop c7. Let's say, for example, that you want to play something like bishop b7, right? So in order to have the c8 square. So how do we finish our opponent here? Next thing all together. Let's say knight g7, king d8. And for example, I guess queen f7 works. Right? What do you play here with black? There's queen e8 mate. There is knight e6 coming. For example, you play knight h6. It's not that easy, right? Let's go back. Let's think all together. So bishop b7 here. How do we finish our opponent? Can you spot it? So let's say knight g7, king d8.
Because there is also the possibility of...
I think this wins, yeah?
yeah.
Here, here, there, here,
Oh.
Here, check. Beautiful. Rook takes a 97.
Wow.
Mhm.
This is a really immortal.
Exactly, yeah.
And
No.
what happens if another variation, maybe weaker or maybe not the, but I think it is
Before bishop b7?
after bishop b7,
Yeah.
knight c7 first.
Knight
I
c7,
mean, maybe it's weaker
king d8.
with the idea of queen b7.
Okay, but are you threatening something now? Because I think I have some time now to. Maybe it's also winning, yeah. But let's say I do something like queen c1, yeah. So what I want to do is to capture on c2 and then to give you 1,000 of checks.
Yes, yes,
Maybe you can take on a8 and still winning. I don't know,
definitely yes.
but I think the other variation is more forced,
Yes,
right?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so this is the Immortal Game. I want to show you another game from Anderssen where he played the Evans Gambit, another interesting opening with the white pieces that we don't see that often today in the top tournaments. And let's go. Let's go. Yeah, this game is between Anderssen and Zukertort, Johannes Zukertort in Germany in 1869. So e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4. How this is called? The Spanish relopes? Italian, right? Spanish relope is after bishop b5, right? So bishop c4, the Italian. And now bishop c5 is the main move here in this position, and the Evans Gambit goes after b4. Adi, what's the idea of b4?
Like if we play bishop at d4,
Yeah,
we can play c3 and then d4 and get a little center.
exactly. So the same idea as before, as the king gambit. So you sacrifice some not as that important pawn, and in return you get the center, right? So here, as Adi says, white plays c3 in order to install this beautiful center on d4. Here there are several options. I want to recommend you one alternative for black here, the variation that I play. So here the main line is bishop a5, but bishop e7 is very interesting. The idea is after d4 you want to go knight a5. And it looks like you are giving the pawn back after knight e5. That's true, but you win the bishop pair. Knight c4, and d5. Then you open this diagonal for this bishop, and this position is very, very healthy for black. Of course, after bishop e7, knight a5, white can retreat this pawn, and again, the idea is to give this e5 pawn back. You don't want to take on d4, it's too much center for white, sorry. Instead, you play d6, and let's say something like queen a4, c6, and this position, it's also great for black. I mean, it's a matter of taste. You can also play bishop a5 as they did in this game, which is perfectly natural. So the bishop on a5 does a fantastic job because now after d4, e takes d4, you can never take back with the pawn since there is a pin. So d4 anyway was played, e takes d4, and short castle. Anderssen sacrificing 3 pawns. For example, if you take on c3, then queen b3. That's precisely white's idea, like to attack this pawn on f7. And let's say after queen e7, knight c3, threatening to go to d5, and then you have to capture on c3. These two bishops are like two monsters, yeah? They are extremely dangerous, these bishops on c4 and b2, and later on you will open files with e5. So that's why this is too dangerous, and black plays a prophylactic move, bishop b6. Maybe looks a little bit stupid. What's the bishop doing there? But the thing is, it's a prophylactic move against queen b3. Why queen b3 is not a very good move now? Exactly, knight f5, perfect. The point is, after bishop f7, king f8, there's no efficient way of protecting this bishop on f7. If you play something like queen d5, how do you finish? c6. All right, I think, okay, this is risky. or maybe it doesn't win because of queen d6, king f7. All right, you still got king e8, and nothing happens, I think. But knight f6 is easier, right? You attack the queen. There are no checks. Next move, you capture this guy, and black's better. So that's why bishop b6 is so nice, because there's no queen b3 move. So instead, white took on d4, c takes d4, and d6 was played. You don't want to go knight f6 straight away. Why you don't want to go knight f6? Why you think black played d6 first and not knight f6 straight away? To stop what? To stop e5, right? Now e5 is very strong. This knight has nowhere to go. I mean, g4 doesn't look very good. You can just kick this knight back by playing h3. We'll have to go back to h6. Like, this smells really bad, right? So that's why d6 is played first. So in order to stop e5, and later you can develop your knight by playing knight f6 or even knight e7. So d5 was played by Anderssen. Maybe this is not the most natural move because you are closing the diagonal for this bishop, but the thing is you're opening another one for maybe an even stronger bishop. You want to go d5 and then bishop b2, and the bishop is a fantastic piece. d5 was played, knight a5, bishop b2, attacking g7, and here you can't capture the bishop on c4, right? Because there is bishop g7, and then the next move you're going to capture the rook from h8, and white is just better, right? So that's why black played knight a7. And do you think it's possible to take on g7 now?
You will open the g file against the white king.
Yes, but more important than that, after rook g8, there are two pieces hanging, right? So bishop g7, rook g8, and now there is no way of stopping to blunder any of these bishops, right? Or one of those bishops. Sorry?
Bishop h3 is coming at some point also.
Yeah, bishop h3, and then you're just a piece up, so you cannot defend both pieces at the same time. So that's why bishop g7 is just a blunder. So that's why Anderssen didn't go for this. And instead, he just played the most natural move, bishop d3. Bishop d3, short castle, and knight to c3. Okay, black's a pawn up, but this bishop is very, very good, and there is some compensation for sure. The knight is also not properly placed on a5, right? Not so many tasty squares for this knight. So that's why there's some compensation in this position. Knight g6 was played, and knight to e2. Now this bishop is targeting the g7 square. There could be some plans related by bringing this knight to g3 and then to f5 or even to h5 to force f6, and then this square would be very, very weak. Here, Zukertort played c5. It's a natural move. I would prefer to play something like c6 here, putting some pressure on the center, and then not closing this diagonal for this bishop. c5 makes some sense because now you have a pass pawn, and maybe you want to go c4 in some position. But c6 makes more sense to me. I don't know. c5 was played, queen to d2, connecting the rooks, and now f6 was played. Maybe it was not necessary. Maybe bishop g4 made a little bit more sense here. I guess he was afraid of something like queen c3, f6, and now knight to g5. Given the fact that you can't take because there is checkmate on g7, right? But what's the best move here for black? Black moves and wins. Again, forcing moves. Always the same thing, I know. But it works. Captures, checks, and threats. Can we check? No. Can we capture something? Yes. This guy, but not a very good idea, right? Checkmate in one move. Then bishop e2, also another possibility. So those are the possible captures. What are the threats? Can we threat something? Can we threat some piece with a simple move? 95. That's very reasonable. Another one. So you are threatening this knight from g5. How do you threat the bishop from d3? With a simple move. Yeah, Adi? Exactly. c4. Great. c4, deviation. Deflection. Not deviation, right? Deflection. Now, you can't take on c4 because of the knight takes, queen takes. You will be able to take on g5. And you can't move the bishop back to c2 because the knight on e2 is hanging. So that's why c4 is such a strong move. Right? So, bishop g4 was very interesting. Instead, Zukertort, I love this name, Zukertort, he played f6. And here, Anderssen, king to h1. All right. Maybe, as you can see in the game, he will try something on the g file. Bishop c7 was played, very natural, so maybe you want to expand your majority, you want to make use of that, so you got 3 versus 1, so it's always good to advance, to push those pawns. Rook ac1, so no more c4 moves. Rook b8 and knight to g3 here by Anderssen, who wants to join the party, jump into f5 and put in some pressure. Here b5 was played and knight to f5. What do you guys think? It's a great idea to take on f5, or you just want to continue your plan on the queen side? I mean, the first move that came to my mind when I was analyzing this game was bishop f5. So I'm material up, so I want to exchange some pieces. But then I realized there were some troubles. What happens? After bishop f5, e takes f5, we would love to go to e5. But is that really possible? What would you play here with the white pieces? Simple chess, captures, checks and threats. Sorry?
Knight take e5.
Knight takes e5, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but what happens if I just take with my pawn? There's nothing direct, right?
Yeah.
But that's the method, yeah? You check all the captures, so check the other one.
Bishop take e5.
Yeah, and now if I take with my d pawn, what happens? Now maybe you can see
Yeah, now I can push.
unprotected pieces. Simple.
Oh, the pawns.
Exactly. The pawn on c5 is hanging, so rook takes c5. And if black takes back with the f pawn, what do you play? Exactly. That's the key. So if black takes with the f pawn, then knight g5, and then this knight is going to be extremely strong on e6. There are many threats here. Also, you're keeping an eye on h7, but the knight is arriving to e6. This is just too good for white. So that's why it's not that easy to take on f5. And Zukertort played b4 here, expanding his majority. And now Anderssen, as you remember, these players were very aggressive, and he plays rook to g1. He wants to push the g pawn and then try to open this diagonal for this bishop. Also, as you are going to see in the game, after g4, there are some maneuvers related by bringing the rook to g3 and to h3. Or even doubling rooks on the g file. Looks very interesting. So, last chance to take on f5. It's now or never, because if you wait one more move, as it happened in the game after g4, whenever bishop takes on f5, g takes f5 is going to open this dangerous file for black. So, now it's even more dangerous to take on f5. Knight e5 was played at this moment, and again we have to analyze all the captures, and bishop takes e5 was played. Same idea. If black takes back with the pawn, with the f6 pawn, knight to g5 and knight e6 coming, but maybe this was the best option for black, because after d takes e5, now white starts attacking with rook g3. And it's not easy to push this pawn to c4, right? You will have to bring a queen to c7, and then it's not easy. Rook f7 was played by Zukertort, and g5. Opening lines, yeah? Since this king on g8 is not very safe. Now bishop f5, e takes f5, and now Zukertort blundered. Maybe the best move was c4, bishop takes, knight takes, and rook c8, exchanging some pieces, so the attack is not so dangerous anymore. But he played queen to d5. And what do you play here with the white pieces? G6. All right, let's see what happens. So, for example, I think I can play rook d7. And now you are the one with troubles on the d file, right? I'm threatening to play e4 or even c4. Looks annoying for white, right? I don't know, I'm just analyzing with you guys, so maybe I'm just...
I was hoping he would take the h-file, but you take on h7?
On h7, yes. And now I will play king h8. So you can't move the f3 knight, since there is a pin. Your queen on g2 is unprotected, so e4 is a threat. g7 is protected. So it looks to me that black could be even better. Okay, so g6, very interesting. More moves. Again, I'm going to keep telling you guys the same thing for these 2 weeks, but it's just forcing moves. It sounds really trivial, but it works. Captures, checks, and threats.
Oh, okay, so g takes f6.
G takes f6, and after rook takes f6?
I want to play bishop c4.
Exactly, you see? So, capture. And then, threat. How can I threat the queen? Yes, bishop c4. Maybe it's stupid, but many times you find that it's not. Bishop c4 just wins on the spot. So after knight c4, queen takes c5 check, and you can't move the queen because there's a pin here. So that's why queen d5 was a blunder. After g takes f6, you can't take back. And if you can't take back, you're going to bring this other rook to the g file, and then something bad's going to happen on g7. All right, so rook d8 was played, putting some pressure on d3. And now rook to g1, played by Anderssen. So I want to ask you, what happens after queen takes d3? Yeah, any suggestions?
Rook G7,
Rook G7.
G7, Rook G7.
Yes. King F8. And now Queen H6.
Yeah.
You sure? Checkmate in 2 for black.
Oh,
So Queen H6, Queen F3, and Rook D1. Be careful. Simple. Captures. And threats. Anybody from the YouTube channel? You guys can see how to finish black here.
I don't know if the knight e5 is possible here.
Knight E5. Knight E5. How about if I just take your
Yeah.
queen?
No, queen. No, but Ali says queen f1.
Queen F1.
I can bring back my rook.
Yeah, but I think this also wins for black. So takes, takes, and takes.
Yeah, yeah.
So not knight E5. Much more simple than that. Simple chess.
Rook G8,
Rook.
G8.
Rook G8. All right. I didn't see that, but okay. So if I take Queen G5, that's your idea. That's checkmate.
Yeah.
So can I go King F7 here?
And now
No, knight
e5.
Knight E5, right? So maybe Rook G8 wins. Yeah, let me see. Rook G8. If I take Queen G5 and then Queen G7 and Queen E7, right? So can I play King H8 here? Yeah, that was very good.
So how do you stop knight e5?
Oh, can we
Queen H6, be careful. Queen F3 and Rook to D1.
What about knight g5?
Now?
Knight g5?
Now.
Queens are made.
Boom.
Oh yeah, knight takes e5?
Knight takes E5. Same.
Oh, I'm taking the queen first, then knight e5.
Yeah.
Yeah, why not? I think it's that though.
It's like a
Queen takes e5.
Taking the queen first and then.
it's still
Yeah, yeah.
So you take the queen, Rook takes, and Knight takes E5, for example. So how you stop Knight F7? This was a solution that I was gonna propose you. So here just Queen takes E3, Rook takes E3, Rook G7. He's got to take, otherwise there is checkmate on G8. Takes, takes, King F8, and how do I threaten checkmate in 2 moves? Knight G5. I'm threatening Knight E6 followed by Rook E7. Checkmate. So it's got to resign here too. All right. So after Rook C to G1, it's not possible to take on D3. This is what we just saw. So they played King H8. Looks ugly. Now F takes G7, King G8, Queen H6. Beautiful. The point is that black resigned after Queen D6. Why? Finish Zukertort the way Anderssen did, in a brilliant style.
Queen H7.
And King takes
Uh,
king,
Rook
rook h1.
H1.
I mean rook h3.
So King H7, sorry, Queen H7, King H7, Rook H3. How about Queen H6?
h6.
Yes.
Don't wanna knight g5.
Yeah, King takes E7.
Oh.
Not that easy, right? It's more beautiful.
Yeah, on F6 maybe?
So queen takes now or after taking on h7?
Oh, I think I see it.
If you do it now, I just take on d3.
Yeah.
Well, what
So-
about queen takes h3, riding h7, king takes h7,
Yeah.
h6?
f6. How about king g8 back?
Oh,
Hmm.
never mind.
Then rook h3.
So you want to go like this and rook h3. I guess I can escape. Let me try to find out how. For example, rook f6. Nope. So
We do queen takes h7 and then knight g5.
okay, let's check it out. Knight g5. I think I can just take here on g7, or even better, go back.
Also, I thought if you went to g8, I thought I could play rook h3.
Rook h3, and I take on g7.
Oh yeah, that's it.
I think I see it.
No.
Queen takes h7. Can I play queen takes h7, king takes h7, f6, king d8, bishop h7?
Perfect, Adi. Awesome. That's the solution. King takes f6, king g8, bishop h7. Brilliant. King takes rook h3, king g8, and rook h8.
Can't the queen take the bishop on d3?
On, okay. So after queen h7, you mean? Ah, yes, of course. f6, queen takes d3, and same thing. Rook h3. You can't go to g6. You have to go back to g8 and rook h6. Okay. So these two games were the ones that I wanted to show you. In my opinion, they're extremely beautiful. This was the chess in the Romantic era, a lot of sacrifices and attacking chess. So I hope you guys enjoyed the lesson. See you next time.